Well, hello there, everybody. It's really good of you to join us, and I have a great company around me today. My name is Tony Whitehorn. I am the executive advisor for Endava, and I am surrounded by a whole host of C-suite individuals whose names I'm going to, and the individual I'm going to introduce in just one moment. Let me just give you a little bit of a framework as to what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be looking at this subject of digital acceleration and how it's affecting various industries and the challenges that we are all encountering within each of those industries. So I previously was the president and CEO for Hyundai Motor in the UK. And as I said, I'm surrounded by other C-suite individuals. First of all, Ian Plummer. Ian works for Autotrader. Autotrader, for most of you will know, is a FTSE 100 company. And I'll get Ian to introduce himself in just one moment and give his background. And Tim Tozer. And Tim Tozer is the CEO for UK and Ireland for the Allianz partners. So from the insurance industry. So what we have here is we have me a little bit from the motor industry and now digital. We have Ian very much from the publishing industry, and also Tim from the insurance industry. But all of us, as you'll discover in just one moment, have a history in the automotive industry. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all.
It's almost too boring, Tony, but it was also automotive, which is why I know you of old. I worked man and boy in the car industry, ultimately heading up Vauxhall in the UK. I've been a retailer as well as a wholesaler, a manufacturer. But I decided to take a role after a headhunter approached me in insurance. So I'm actually not really an insurance guy. I've been in this job for 2 years. It's new. The jargon of a different industry is definitely the jargon of a different industry. But I'm settled in now and have some perspectives I think that at least might be half useful to you in this conversation, Tony. So it's good to be here.
Great. And of course, Allianz, I believe, are number one in the world in terms of being the biggest insurance company in the world now. So
it's a big company, Tony. It's a big, large company, headquartered in Munich, but with obviously operations in virtually every corner of the globe. Enormous business.
Fantastic. Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, similarly to Tim, but unlike most people in the automotive industry, I've worked in at least two different parts of it, like Tim, in other words, retailer and brand. And quite unusually, I've worked in brand at a head office level for Renault Nissan based out of France, and also for Renault in the UK, and then through Renault Nissan retailing in the UK and the Volkswagen Group in the UK as well. So the NSC as well as the head office, all the way through to running a retailer and then the MD of a retailer group. So with that sort of broad experience across the different parts of automotive, I like to think it gives me a chance to know what it's like with the different hats that people wear in this industry. And people often talk about gamekeepers being turned poachers and so on between retailers and brands. So I've probably done that a couple of times. But what I found was that the common thread of everything that I enjoyed doing, but also what I thought was most influential to drive the business forward, was digital. So about 3 and a bit years ago, I took myself off from Volkswagen, who were heading on a good digital journey, but I didn't think at the right pace for me, and joined a fully digital company, hence my journey to Autotrader, where I am now as commercial director.
Thank you. You know, it's fascinating, this, because I think, as I said, all of us have got the heart in, and our history is very much oriented around the automotive industry. But all three of us in our C-suite models have actually taken slightly different journeys, and we therefore can look at the motor industry, but also other industries from different perspective. Now, Ian, if I'd just like to start with you, because I think Autotrader have taken a fascinating journey in terms of movement. And I think it's useful that you just give a little bit of an understanding so people appreciate what Autotrader have done in terms of that digital journey.
The journey that Autotrader has been on is quite impressive, even if I say so myself. Obviously, I don't take ownership of that because I wasn't really there during the major part of that transition. But the company's got a long history of around 42, 43 years now, I think. But it started out essentially as a classified magazine for used cars when a UK entrepreneur called John Majeski found the concept in America of people publishing small pictures and text, mostly text really, of cars that were for sale. He brought the concept back over to the UK, grew the business, and it evolved very strongly from there. But chapter one, if you like, of Autotrader's history was a very successful magazine publishing company with publishing operations around the UK, regional press titles and so on. So the concept of the content was different by geography. Chapter two was the transition to digital. So we had a website in the late 90s, first website around 96, 97, quite early on. And it worked well. By about 2007, the revenues from digital exceeded those from print. And in 2013, the decision was taken to end print. So the company went from a team of around 5,000 people, lots of different brands and sub-brands. I don't know how many offices, but I've heard around 60, to a team of only 800 based in 2 offices, London and Manchester, and nothing other than the digital presence of 1 brand. So a narrowing of focus, but a far more efficient and far more profitable business. Right now, today, on the FTSE, in the FTSE 100 in the UK, it's ranked as almost the largest digital company in the UK, along with people like Rightmove, who have the same sort of model of a marketplace for property. So a highly profitable company with around 70% operating margin, which anybody in the automotive industry would dream of and is usually jealous of, and doesn't almost like Autotrader because of. But that transition to digital is being succeeded, if you like, by a chapter 3 we're in now, which is a transition to becoming more of a tech company. And that's really about using data to power both what we do, but also other solutions in the industry. So we see ourselves more as a tech player now, as a platform, if you like, than a digital marketplace only.
Wow. So you've really moved from being a sort of an analog magazine company to a publisher to sort of a digital company, and now to a data company. That's a fascinating movement. So just tell me one thing. Do you feel that there's been a big culture change, and has the culture changed within the company because of that?
The culture did change from what I've been told, and stories have been recounted, and even Harvard Business Review analysis have been done on this, about the movement of the shift, if you like, of the culture. A bit like Spotify, for example, we moved to things like tribes and squads and so on, and things like Scrum techniques are more than well known in sort of digital industry, and they're sort of almost relatively passé now in terms of what they allow. But the culture is very sort of purpose-driven and values-led, collaborative and innovative, focused really on outputs and so on, and on speed, empowerment, open information flows, consensual decision-making if possible, but generally very flat structures, nothing like the hierarchical pyramidal structure that you'd find in an OEM and a more traditional player. Learning from failure, for example, is the thing that I found very hard to do in an OEM. When you do a digital project, usually it's built on a business case with a spreadsheet with 5,000 tabs to it, built over a 5-year model period with an awful lot of detail. By the time you finish the planning, the world has probably moved, let alone by the time you finished V1, which is usually a sort of 18-month scale of project, and V2 is another 18 months, and they're all delayed, and we release hundreds of updates every day, literally, and learn from them. We try and make very few that are impactful for consumers and our customers, our retailers, unless we're really sure of having tested them, A/B testing them. With a 67 million visits size of website, that's a monthly number of visits, and around 10 million uniques every month. A/B testing allows you to really understand what works and what doesn't. So the speed of movement is really very different, and like I said, agility and speed are fundamentally at the heart of what we need to live and breathe to make it work.
So that's fascinating. So you have seen a culture change in the business by virtue of moving from this analog to now data-driven type of situation.
Yeah, completely. I mean, the culture was, there were barons, if you like, within the different brands and the different regional entities in the past. There were people were maybe managed slightly differently. The sort of empowerment wasn't necessarily the same. The policies of how people were rewarded, or what benefits they had, were maybe different. there's a very level playing field in the way we work now, and anybody can say anything to anybody and have an opinion on absolutely anything, and is willing, freely invited to share that in an open way. Now, Autotrader, I wasn't there at the time, but with a more traditional structure with smaller power bases and so on, and sometimes some competing silos, it probably didn't work in quite the same way, and it wasn't as collaborative and as open and as nimble.
Okay, I'm going to compare that then now with the insurance industry, Tim. So would you say that there's the openness, there's the autonomy in overall in the insurance industry?
And I'm talking generically, obviously.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
I mean, I would say no. I think we're behind the curve. I think there's a high level of awareness in the industry as to the risks out there, as to whether what Amazon have done to retail is going to hit insurance, and that is almost fear driven, to be honest, and that would be the case with some. I mean, we see external developments, culture changing, driverless cars, steady progress to the emergence of the Internet of Things. So there's a high level of awareness, very high level of awareness for what's out there. There's also a backdrop as to performance issues. I mean, some of you might have seen Lloyd's of London, their results announced yesterday, a loss of £400 million in the half year, COVID related, with COVID costing 2.4 billion. So, there are some very big issues out there. And there's a load of customer research. I mean, I could quote some from Ernst & Young, whereby only 14% of users of the insurance industry are happy with the way they're dealt with. Only 44% having had any contact with their insurer over the past 18 months. So the concept of, CRM relative to the supplier of your insurance is, almost alien. So there are massive gaps out there. Now, there are tentative steps on a sort of best can do on legacy platforms, which are predominantly what are in town as far as the insurance industry is concerned. So there's a whole load of transformation to come. As I said, the awareness is high of the issues at stake, i.e. potentially survival. I mean, not to be too dramatic about it, but, there are nimble operators out there reinventing themselves. So large companies, legacy-based, heavily regulated. Many of you will have had claims experience from the insurance industry. I would say one of the things, as a neutral, sort of hopefully neutral third party almost to the industry, is ambiguity in terms and conditions. So some of the basic non-sexy bits of the customer proposition, which, in automotive terms, I would say are handled pretty well, I think have been overlooked. So quite a mountain to climb, I would say, frankly.
Okay, this is fascinating, because what you've got here is you've got almost two ends of the spectrum. You've got a business in Autotrader who have been very agile and moved analog to digital very, very quickly. And you've got a whole industry, which is the insurance industry. And let's be honest, and the three of us would understand this, is that I think motor is probably somewhere in the middle between sort of where the insurance industry are. A lot of people have legacy systems still, and where Autotrader are, which is very nimble, very, very quick. So it's I think what we've got here is we've got sort of almost three industries at different stages within all of this. So just going back to you there, Ian. When you change the front end side of it, because Tim mentioned about the back end, because let's all be honest, what the customer wants is the customer wants a seamless front end experience, and that comes from a digital environment. You change the front end, but surely it's the back end, as Tim says, that is the biggest problem, isn't it? That's where the challenges really come.
I'd say yes and no. I think when you're lucky enough to be in a fully digital environment and doing it properly, you put the right people together, and you don't think, like I touched on earlier, in silos with a UX designer coming up with something really sexy that actually doesn't go anywhere, doesn't create any value. So you have to make sure that things work with the right back end. So you put teams together that have got the various sort of competencies, and you have stand-ups every day where people are talking to each other and sharing their progress on their respective parts of the sort of direction of travel you're working on. And you work iteratively, so you don't all of a sudden go live. I mean, it reminds me of Heathrow Terminal 5. There's a big go live day. Something like that has to have a big go live day, but maybe they did it wrong. Remember when there was problems galore, the conveyor belts for the luggage didn't work, people couldn't get in through the car parks to park, even to work there, let alone to travel out of there. We do things iteratively, and we test all the time. So I think we avoid a lot of those problems. Where we have maybe more back-end issues or come across them more is working obviously with our retailer partners, because we try and plug with retailers or with our brand partners, the OEMs. And they're typically, you see often the limits of a project or a concept or a new bit of functionality you're adding in if you can't plug in well to the back-end systems of those players. Now, as a marketplace, what we need to do is try and always develop systems which allow many people to plug into our way of working in a way that does work for them, but we can't always do something which is specifically modified for every single partner that we have, because there are just too many. We have 14,000 retailers working with us, and that's about 85% of the market in the UK, and all of the brands working with us. We can't tailor things to each of them. So to a degree, they adapt to us. Equally, we see things like stock feeds from manufacturers where we gather their data in on new cars, for example, where their new cars is far further behind the same curve of awareness than used cars in the UK as well as everywhere else. And brands are very unused to sharing that information. By sharing it, I don't mean sharing it externally, although that's true, but sharing it anywhere online. So it's usually embedded in an internal system, which is probably used also by the retailers to order cars. And the stuff they see is coded jargon, abbreviations all over the place, and not something you can immediately turn into something that's user-friendly. So we have to get very skilled in terms of data integration to take that back-end data, if you like, and actually make it consumer-centric. So it's almost the other way around than what you were saying. Having a consumer front end that doesn't work at the back end, we have to take the back end that's often a bit clunky and improve the data ourselves with our, we have a data scientist team that talk about lakes and things like that, putting lots of data into it and taxonomy that ends up coming out of there working much better. So that's maybe a different angle on.
Okay, so I mean, Tim, do you think that with the recent pandemic that there's been an acceleration in your industry in that desire? Because you were talking about, we know we've got to do it in the insurance industry, as it is in the auto industry. Let's be honest. There's sort of, yes, we know we've got to get there. We know we've got to become more digitized. But are people, has COVID, has that accelerated that?
Yes, but I suspect to a slightly lesser degree than automotive. I mean, I think automotive retail in particular, the fast tracking for retailers to allow customers to purchase digitally, sign finance documents digitally, etc., etc. I mean, the spurt has been put on. I mean, I think COVID is focusing minds in the insurance industry as to its performance and what it has to do as a business, yes. But I think a lot had already been set in train. And I would say generally, although we are behind the curve, there's an awful lot of consumer research that has gone on as to what they want. I mean, and in terms of insurance and some of the assistance services that insurance companies also provide, I mean, it is about a blended solution. I mean, right now, if we look at the numbers of calls that come into our contact centres on mobile phones, of course, it's very high. It's about 60%. And then the option by pressing button 1, 2, or 3, or whatever, to go digital is still quite low. And yet the customer has the choice. And we ask people why they don't go digital, and it's because they like talking to somebody. Now that you could have endless debates as to, is that an older age profile? Is it more conservative type? And I suspect that is the case. But we know that still we have to offer something that is both analog and digital, and critically is blended to the extent that people can choose to flip from one to the other. I mean, if from a service from us you are broken down and calling for assistance, it's quite nice to know that you can flip in and out. So I think that's all in train. It is marshalling the energies and making the very big investments to replace legacy systems that comes over time. So I wouldn't say COVID has been the catalyst for a super spurt. It's just driving focus on improving the business anyway. And look, there's quite a lot going on. I mean, I don't want to paint the industry as dinosauric in its slowness, definitely not. There's work going on with digital initiatives. I mean, the pain points in consumer journeys are clearly known and identified, setting up customer portals, enhancing data analytics in terms of algorithms, in terms of deep dives into data relative to pricing, et cetera, because, the insurance industry is heavily driven by the underwriting community within it. And there's almost a mystique in this industry about underwriting. I mean, of course, they're the people that do the pricing, and they can use data to great effect, as well as in marketing terms, determining who are the best type of customers for insurance purposes and who are higher risk. So, all of that actually in the guts of the business has been fairly sophisticated, but the game is needing to be upped. I mean, if you look at those Lloyd's announcements, Lloyd's of London announcements, you see a combined ratio, that's the jargon, of 112%, which means the schemes are burning to that degree. You take in 100, you're paying out 112. So, action is being taken and crystallized by virtue of COVID, but it's more general business focus as opposed to necessarily the specifics of digitalization, which is underway, but a journey.
I mean, I think you made a really good point there in terms of the customer is sort of saying, I don't know whether I am quite ready to go down the digital route. I mean, obviously AI comes into this, and chat boxes. So do you think that you're going to see more AI come into your industry, or is there a reticence to do that?
Definitely. There's no reticence at all. There might be some reticence with some profiles of customer, but no, the industry is investing heavily. I mean, it can use AI. I mean, a very simple example is voice recognition relative to immediate auto population of the file for a claim. For an example, will be much more efficient in a contact center environment. And the industry is focused upon that. I mean, it knows it has to improve its efficiency in a customer orientated way. So, I mean, it asks customers what they believe they want and need, and also what they are anticipating going forward. And I mean, I don't know about you, Tony, but me certainly. I mean, I bank digitally now. I've done it for 5 years. The checkbook is a distant memory. So even people of a certain age, I think you and I are about the same age, Tony, we can move into these new areas as well. Yep. And so, look, we obviously anticipate change. And to take AI as an example, yes, robots will form a frame in the business as well as plugging into the data analytic work that we do already.
So Ian, how much does AI play now in your industry? So let's say I'm going to call you the publishing industry because that's how I still see you. And hopefully that's sort of fair. But is AI sort of taken over a great deal in your industry overall?
Not fundamentally, no. I think the data and the power of data to fuel both insights on the one hand and actual solutions on the other is absolutely critical. But it's not necessarily sort of bot type responses to consumers and so on that really has got a lot of traction in our world. I think those areas are relevant for manufacturers in their CRM landscapes and that kind of thing. I think they're relevant in the production side equally of automotive, and in the supply chain management of automotive, for example, as well. There can be a lot of use of automation in things like dynamic pricing, I think, going forward. And that isn't an area where the automotive industry is at the moment, but I think it'll probably get that way as we go down a more direct sales route in the future. At the moment, we're in a traditional sort of pricing model, wholesaling to retailers who then retail locally based on a bit more gut feel than anything else. So I think it was a way to go.
Okay, so let's look at the three industries then. Let's look at sort of where Autotrader is, which is sort of the internet type of business as at today, moving into data, get that, insurance and automotive. But which innovation do you think is going to be the most significant within those three industries, and perhaps in the wider context in terms of, is it 5G? Is it AI? Is it the cloud? Is it all three? Is there something else that we should be looking at, just in terms of C-suite individuals that we should say, this is coming over the horizon? I mean, I was in San Francisco last year, and everything was about AI. Everything was about AI. We wouldn't have had that probably 5 years ago. So is there something else that's coming over the horizon? I mean, Tim, what's your view? Is it sort of AI, 5G, cloud, or all of the above, or is there something else that you see both in the automotive, insurance, and us as a society?
I certainly, if you look at what insurers are doing, and I think that was a good comparison about pricing. I mean, certainly we're more sophisticated on pricing than car manufacturers, because car manufacturers don't flex pricing necessarily by algorithms relative to, we've got this stock of that, and then there's this sales peak here. This industry is good at that. This industry was good at, still is good at rooting out fraudulent claims. That is all for the betterment of the business. I think the way we see digital at this moment, given, as I keep saying, that there's a journey ahead of us, is, but what's it going to do for the business? It is going to reduce costs. It's going to improve the customer experience, so long as we keep offering that experience in ways that those specific customers want. So the mandation of this route or that route, digital or analog, is something we would fight shy of at this stage of our development. Speed to market, in terms of products, underwriting efficiencies. So in the technical sense, underwriting, the pricing has all the information it needs to know. Claims efficiency. I mean, there are some big wins there which are being got at by insurance companies. I mean, claims assessors, we can use cameras remotely, obviously, now to assess a building in terms of structural weaknesses in its roof, or a claims assessor can use drones to do all of that. So those are very practical solutions where the technology is already there, that will enable us to become more efficient. I mean, if you look sort of beyond all of that, I mean, we all saw Mr. Musk and his chip under the skin of the pig, didn't we? And you've got to wonder whether those brain signals as to what people might be thinking, if ever you had chips put under your skin, might lead to in terms of controlling a car. Because my understanding of 6G, and I mean, I'm not a particular expert at this, is you'll be able to be connecting directly between the Internet of Things and not through a network. So the mind will start to boggle as to the scope that would extend to cars connecting to neighboring cars, and anticipating behaviors and brain impulses as to where this car is going to go. But look, that's a long way in the future, isn't it? But for an insurance company, all that is in scope, because I think what I'm saying about our journey as an industry is, the big companies are looking into that sort of future and are certainly scoping their transformation now to take account of all of that, because they know that if they don't, they will get left behind, and there will be nimbler operators out there. And look, a lot of this is almost sci-fi, isn't it? But those options and capabilities will be there, however distant they might seem away from us just right this moment.
I mean, so from your perspective, you're saying actually it's wrong to say that it's going to be 5G, AI. It could be something that we haven't even thought about, because this is such a we're in such a fast moving business and environment that it's almost wrong to sort of say that's the next big thing. It could be something that we haven't even dreamt about. I mean, 6G is a really good example of that might be the one that is the game changer, that actually moves from an evolution to a revolutionary step.
Yes, and I mean, you're right, and I mean, I can't almost intellectually scope it in totality. The immediacy is, of course, we know that the Internet of Things is going to enable home insurance to connect and work out whether the pipe pressure in your pipes is going to lead you to a risk of a water leak. So there's all sorts of quite good practical stuff going on right now. It's piecing it all together into a coherent, cohesive whole that works for the business and the consumer, which is the journey ahead of us. And look, I'm unlike Ian. I have no exposure to the programming of the infrastructure as to how that works to handle all of that. That's a very big deal. I mean, the business I work for and all other insurance companies have got people doing that. And, I don't get close to that side of the business to see it in action, to be honest. But it's all there cooking.
Okay. And Ian, from your point of view, whereby, you are in the digital arena now, do you see from your perspective and from your business that it's going to be AI, 5G, cloud? Is it anything, or are you sort of saying a little bit like Tim? No, I think it's going to be something new. I don't think we should hang our hat on something specific.
I think a mixture of both the answers to those two sort of angles, if you like, you just quoted. I think the cloud, it's a big theme. We're finishing transitioning to the cloud, and anything that can accelerate the speed of your digital solutions, whatever they may be, websites, etc., increase the security of them, increase the interoperability of the platform. That's great. So that's definitely the way we're heading, and I think it's the direction of travel for many. I don't think it's totally transformational though from a longer term perspective in the industry. I touched on the tech bit a minute ago. We see ourselves more of a platform player. Platforms would include people like Airbnb or Uber or Amazon and so on. They're providing solutions. We think of them as websites, but they're data providers as well. They're providing solutions on their data that you can use on the platform itself, or you can use to power a solution elsewhere, or to drive insights on those solutions. And I think one of the key themes that comes across to me is the convergence angle of how that notion of platform can allow new solutions to apply. The example I give to that would be, I'm looking to buy a new car at the moment. I'm looking to buy an electric vehicle. That's a really big theme, obviously, in our industry. And just touch on one small additional point, which would be sustainability. That's vital, I think, in our industry, and I think in our own sort of company, and maybe in the digital space, but it is obviously for automotive. So sustainability, anything that can drive is massive. But electric vehicle, it's complicated. You've got numerous apps you've got to you get used to for the charging solutions and the payment of that charging. It's just one example. And then when you're driving a car these days, you're thinking, well, that's great, but I can't actually drive the car into the city centre. Do I get a bus for the remainder of my journey? Can I jump on an e-scooter or an e-bike or a bike? And I think the convergence that you'll see will be the kind of thing I saw a company do just recently. And to take my example of the apps that you need for the very different charging solutions that are out there at the moment. And at the moment, you've got to go to one post, see whether it's the right one for you, and it's not, go to another one. But there's an app that's allowing that convergence to happen. So you can use one app that connects with all the different solutions, a bit like a Monzo for the financial transactions and so on, or as a bank. So that convergence will allow me potentially tomorrow to drop my car at a point where I can immediately get onto a scooter and not need to actually log into an app, press a button to Apple Pay for it. It'll just realize that I've now taken that scooter, it'll recognize me as a user and so on, and then it'll just charge me to my account. And I don't have to think about it. I might get off the scooter and then get back in a car. My car's similarly paying automatically for the car park because it's sensing where I am, and it knows I've defaulted to, say, like I have with congestion charge in London. I'm on an automatic pay in the congestion charges in London, whereby every time I go through the zone, it picks up on the camera that I've gone through there, and I don't need to say to myself, I've got to go onto to their website before the end of the day, because if I don't, I'll get a fine for, what's it, £60 or something. So automation and convergence make it easier to go from one realm to another of mobility rather than a car as a thing on its own. I think is a big thing.
Tim, you're going to say
mobility. I mean, the insurance companies want to plug into.
Yeah.
Whatever mobile, whether it's a scooter, whether it's your car, and that's fundamental.
And I think, I think that's really interesting, because I think what digital has done is what I call, it's made porous boundaries. Historically, we've all worked in verticals. Do you know what? You can't work. I, as an individual, don't work as a person, don't work in verticals. I work as an holistic situation. So I have those porous boundaries, and I think that, as you rightly say, Tim, all of a sudden you're going to be into completely new arenas. Let's say for Autotrader, a good example, Autotrader, are they historically a publishing company, now a data company, but actually are they going to be more in the retailing industry? Are those the sort of things that they're going to enter much more into? So I think that there's some fascinating things, and really comes to my final question for both of you, really, and that is, what do you see as the biggest digital challenge for your specific industry, but also the auto industry? So what's the specific challenge, would you say, Ian, for your industry, but also for the auto industry as well?
I think it's probably the same one. It's partnership. And you mentioned a minute ago, the world has changed an awful lot. It is changing fast. I saw a funny quote the other day regarding sort of the COVID period, and the quote goes something along the lines of, there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. I'll challenge you quickly to work out, guess who said that. It wasn't Churchill or anyone sort of prosaic. Vladimir Lenin said that a long time ago. And I was surprised by this quote. I thought it was a very apt one for what's gone on recently, but also by who said it. But I think things are changing very fast. And I think the challenge is people in the industry understanding that the benefits of moving fast are far more important, and quick response to the changing world we're living in, rather than building things yourself. Because building things yourself, either one, takes too long, two, takes you out of your comfort zone, you're not good at it, three, might be just too late because you've taken too long and you're not done it particularly well and it's failed anyway. So you need to, if you're going to fail fast, as they say. So to take an example, without wishing to denigrate my previous employer, Volkswagen Group, I remember being struck by one particular comment near the end of my time there. That was one of the reasons I thought, actually, it's not where I should be, which was along the lines of, we're going to develop some amazing software solutions to make the consumer feel like they're in their Volkswagen environment, the digital environment, when they're in their car, and they'll use it elsewhere too. And I thought, no chance. We're brilliant at building cars. We're not particularly good at software projects. IT departments in OEMs are not really digitally sort of focused. They keep the lights on, they keep the old legacy systems moving, but doing the same stuff that Apple do better than them, no. And convincing a consumer that your solution is better than Apple's or Google's that they're using 8 hours a day for the hour they're spending in their car a day, no. So partnership, working with, for example, Apple CarPlay, and bringing that into your car, over-the-air updates and so on, keeping the car development that brands do, for example, focused on things like IoT stuff that could be about the car's about to break down, saving your warranty costs, getting the car into the workshop. That's great. So partnership, sharing openly, taking some risks, obviously not controlling everything yourself. That's probably our biggest opportunity as well as challenge, and I think the same for the industry.
Okay. And Tim, what's the biggest challenge stroke opportunity do you see in the insurance and the automotive industry?
I think for insurance, it's understanding that the best way to deliver this is going to be gradual, because what Ian has just been talking about as to how an automaker, in somewhat of its conservative ways, is a bit slow, then so is this industry, so is insurance, because it's large, it's big company stuff. And, the risk is if you reinvent everything so quickly or try to, you'll fail. Now, as I've implied, I think there's good gradual stuff going on, whether it be the use of drones to help with risk assess, whether it be actually an extent to which telematics is already able to engage us as first notification of loss in cars, because we're doing that now. I mean, if you had an accident in a connected car, we would know if we were the roadside assistance provider or the insurer. We can already use the Internet of Things to improve home insurance policies and anticipate risk. So I think what the business is trying to do is, the industry is trying to do, is get to the point where we are able to guide our customers in a closer relationship with them as to risk avoidance, rather than just the risk has already materialized. And that's sort of the holy grail, I think, because insurance companies are not good at building relationships across the whole portfolio of risk that customers might want to insure. I mean, I think most people take pockets of insurance from a variety of companies for a variety of needs. I mean, things are not tending to be wrapped up into one provider, and that is the holy grail. So that's the vision, and I think that vision would be best served by understanding that this has to be gradually worked at. Now, I mean, you can put the pace on, but it's not a big bang, as it were. That's the point I'm trying to make. And in terms of automotive, I mean, look, I think the opportunities with all of these connections, with telematics, with the internet, with 6G, with autonomous cars, all for the insurance industry represents something that can join up, because mobility is the need, isn't it? And we know the demographic issues, we know the difference between city lives and country lives. And so all of those challenges do cross over in terms of what this industry can do for automotive. And that's the interesting piece, isn't it? Which I think you're more than hinting at, is there for the grabbing from nimble companies thinking proactively, positively, working in partnership to get the functionality working like a Swiss watch, rather than anyway clunky to any degree, because none of us as consumers these days have any patience for clunky digital engagements, do we? It's got to be brilliantly delivered.
Really interesting. Really, I mean, so coming out then in summary, therefore, I think that, I think we'd all recognize that digital is here, digital is moving, digital is quick. We have to be fast. We have to be agile. I think agility is a key element in all of this. But actually, in order to enable that to happen, you have to be listening to your customer and not necessarily overnight change something, but introduce it whilst in a sort of gradually. Actually, it has to be strangely sort of a little bit fast, but with degree of flexibility, because that's what the customer wants. He doesn't necessarily want to be quickly in there, but it needs to be flexible. But I think picking up Ian's point is that this actually should be done in partnership with specialists. That's the key, is that you need to get. Hey, I would say it's an IT software company, and they wouldn't I? But I think that it means that you need to get specialists in different arenas coming together with those porous boundaries. Guys, thank you so much. I found that fascinating. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the people who listened in enjoyed it. And all it remains for me to say that if you enjoyed it, then please then subscribe to what we're doing here, share it amongst people so they can actually be part of and listen to some of the conversations that these C-suite three have actually gone through today. Guys, thank you so much. And I really appreciate what you've said here today. Thank you.
Great pleasure. Thank you, Tony.
Cheers, guys.
Nice to see you again, and you, Ian. Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.